The moment she leaned closer in the passenger seat and quietly whispered, "Take me somewhere private," my hands tightened around the steering wheel. The rain had finally stopped, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, and the quiet road ahead suddenly felt heavier than anything I had ever driven through. My wife's best friend had always been cheerful, confident, and impossible to read, but that afternoon her voice carried a fear I had never heard before. I thought I knew exactly what those words meant. I couldn't have been more wrong. What happened over the next few hours changed not only her life but also my marriage, my understanding of trust, and the meaning of standing beside someone when the world has already judged them. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and giving people a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone you care about, and subscribe to Everyday English Podcast. Your support helps us continue sharing emotional stories that remind us all that compassion can change lives. My name is Nathan Mercer, and until that afternoon I believed my life was simple. I had been happily married to my wife, Serena, for almost 9 years. We lived in a peaceful neighborhood, worked ordinary jobs, and enjoyed the quiet routines that many people overlook until life suddenly interrupts them. Serena's closest friend was a woman named Marisol Grant. They had known each other since college, and despite having very different personalities, they remained inseparable. Marisol was energetic, successful, and always seemed to know how to make everyone laugh. She was the kind of person who entered a room carrying sunshine with her. None of us imagined that behind that smile she was carrying a burden too painful to describe. That Saturday afternoon Serena stayed behind at a charity event while I offered to drive Marisol home because her own car had broken down. The drive began with casual conversation about work, family, and summer plans. Then the silence slowly settled between us. I noticed she kept staring out the window, holding her purse tightly against her chest as though it contained something fragile. Every few minutes she looked into the side mirror, almost expecting another vehicle to be following us. I asked if everything was all right, but she only nodded without making eye contact. Just before we reached her apartment, she quietly asked me not to stop there. Instead, she whispered those unforgettable words, asking me to take her somewhere private. My heart immediately raced with confusion. I respected my wife too much to even allow the wrong thought to remain in my mind, yet nothing about Marisol's expression suggested anything inappropriate. She looked terrified. Her face had lost all color, and tiny tears rested in the corners of her eyes without falling. I trusted my instincts and drove toward a quiet public park overlooking a peaceful lake, where families spent sunny afternoons and people walked their dogs along shaded paths. Once we parked beneath a large oak tree, she finally opened her purse. Inside were photographs, printed emails, and a small recording device. With trembling hands, she explained that someone she had trusted for years had been secretly threatening her. A respected businessman had been blackmailing her after she uncovered financial fraud inside the company where they both worked. He believed fear would keep her silent. For months she had carried the weight alone because she feared nobody would believe her. Even worse, anonymous messages had recently started mentioning Serena by name. Marisol wasn't afraid for herself anymore. She was terrified that her best friend would become involved simply because of their friendship. As I listened, every misunderstanding disappeared. This was never about secrets between us. It was about protecting someone she loved while carrying impossible pressure completely alone. She admitted she had wanted to tell Serena many times but couldn't bear the thought of placing her friend in danger. She had chosen that afternoon because she finally realized silence was becoming more dangerous than honesty. I encouraged her to call Serena immediately. At first she resisted, convinced that her friend would feel betrayed. But real friendship survives difficult truths. When Serena arrived at the park less than 30 minutes later, the emotional reunion that followed remains one of the most unforgettable moments I have ever witnessed. There were no angry accusations, only tears, long embraces, and the painful realization that people sometimes hide their deepest struggles because they are trying to protect the very people who love them most. The following weeks became one of the hardest seasons our family had ever faced. Lawyers became involved. Investigators examined the evidence Marisol had carefully collected over many months. The process moved slowly, and every new development brought fresh anxiety. Some friends quietly distanced themselves after hearing rumors. Others questioned why Marisol had waited so long before speaking out. Watching her face those judgments reminded me how easily society misunderstands people carrying invisible battles. Despite the pressure, Serena never left her friend's side. Our dining table became a place where paperwork covered every inch of the surface, while coffee cups and hopeful conversations lasted late into the evening. Instead of allowing fear to divide us, the situation strengthened our marriage. Serena often reminded me that love is measured most clearly during someone else's darkest days. I realized that supporting one hurting person could quietly inspire dozens of others to find courage as well. Months later, the investigation confirmed everything Marisol had revealed. The businessmen responsible faced legal consequences, and several innocent employees were finally cleared after years of false suspicion. More importantly, Marisol no longer carried the crushing loneliness that had nearly destroyed her spirit. She eventually accepted a new position with another company where honesty was valued more than appearances. For the first time in years, her smile returned naturally instead of hiding pain. One bright spring afternoon we gathered again beside the same peaceful lake where everything had begun. Children laughed nearby, birds circled above the calm water, and warm sunlight reflected across gentle waves. Looking around, it was almost impossible to believe that such a peaceful place had once witnessed so much fear. Marisol thanked both of us for believing her before asking for proof. Serena simply smiled, reminding her that true friendship does not disappear when life becomes uncomfortable. It grows stronger because of it. That day changed me forever. I learned that whispers are not always invitations toward betrayal. Sometimes they are desperate cries for help from someone who has spent far too long carrying unbearable pain alone. We often judge situations before knowing the story behind them, but compassion begins where assumptions end. One decision to listen instead of react can save a friendship, protect a family, and even restore someone's hope in humanity. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, and subscribe to Everyday English Podcast. Your support allows more inspiring stories like this to reach people who may need hope today. Special request, please comment below with one word that represents what this story meant to you: trust, hope, courage, or kindness. As the sun slowly settled over the lake that evening, I realized life rarely changes through dramatic speeches or heroic moments. Sometimes it changes because one frightened person finally finds the courage to whisper the truth, and another person chooses to listen without judgment. That single choice transformed fear into healing, loneliness into friendship, and uncertainty into a future filled with hope. Long after that unforgettable drive ended, I understood that the greatest journeys are not measured by miles on the road but by the compassion we show when someone quietly asks us to take them somewhere safe. If you'd like, I can also generate the matching YouTube SEO description, 8 keywords, 8 hashtags, and disclaimer based on this story.